Welcome to the party, pal. Your friendly neighborhood Master Chaos back with you once again. Your seat is reserved at Master Chaos Theater. I've brought the snacks. I've got plenty of crunchy Cheetos, and of course, everyone's favorite, Aprums, part plum, part apricot. So feel free to dig in as we discuss the third entry in the Zatoichi mega franchise. The third film in the Zatoichi franchise is called The New Tale of Zadoichi, also known as Shin Zatoichi Monogatari, from 1963. It runs 91 minutes and is the first Zatoichi film in beautiful color. Essentially, with the third movie, we get an origin story for Zatoichi. We don't backtrack. We do continue forward from where we left off in part 2. There is sort of a dangling plot thread that I'll mention briefly, but it doesn't really play a huge part in the plot, so I won't go into much detail. The main story is Zatoichi meets up with his old master, the man who taught him his deadly maneuvers, and as Sevi filmgoers, we get the impression that Zatoichi and his master will eventually clash. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mentioned that subplot that kind of meanders and doesn't really feed the main story. Well, this subplot is sort of connected to the events of part 2. The brother of one of the villains in part 2 is searching out for Zatoichi for revenge because of what Zatoichi did to his brother in the second film. So that isn't necessarily something we need to focus on. However, I'm going to show you a clip, and this is the clip where not only that subplot sort of reaches a boiling point, but we also meet Zatoichi's master for the first time.
Ichi, わしがわかるか？そういうお声は妙なところだわな。先生、お久しぶりでございました。すまんない喧嘩はやめろ。仕掛けたのはお前たちだな。あんたは一体？わしはな、この位置に人斬り包丁の使い方を教えた男だ。場合によっては弟子の代わりにわしが相手をするぞ。余計なことだ。引っ込んでいてもらおうぜ。負け惜しみは言うな。命拾いをしたと思って素直に刀を引け。一、俺と一緒に来い。一杯やろう。ええ。じゃあ今夜は見逃しておくんなさるんですかい。そうはいかねえよ。用が済んだらここへ戻ってくるんだ。それまで待ってやら。いきねえ。
Now, we're only 3 films in, but we get a first for the series. Zatoichi gets a love interest. Yayoi is his master's younger sister, and she has fallen in love with Zatoichi. There is sort of a hint that they had a connection when Zatoichi was a student there, but of course he's a wanderer, so he left. And, in his mind, he thought, she's a beautiful young woman. What would she want with a sort of a blind, worthless hobo, yakuza, kind of guy like me? But now that he's returned, emotions are rekindled. And we get a really beautiful scene between the two of them where she sort of expresses her feelings and Zatoichi breaks down. And we see a side of him that we haven't seen before. And it's a side of him that just wants to be a normal human being and not this vagabond murderer, essentially. Let me show you that scene right now.
ひょっとして私をいちさんのおかみさんにしてもらえないだろうかって。 いちさん、どう思います？
もう一度今おっしゃったことを言ってみてください。
私、いちさんのおかみさんにしてもらいたいんです。こんなこと言ってはいけないけれど、私は貧乏浪人の娘。腰入れすると言っても小袖一枚持ってはいけない女です。いちさんならそれも承知で快くもらってくださると思って。
お嬢さん、それ本当ですか？本当にそんな。
今朝いちさんと一緒に竹やぶの中を歩いていて、そんなことを思って、今日は一日そのことばかり思い続けていました。いちさん、私のような女は嫌いですか？
とんでもない。もったいない。もう身分が違います。それにそんな第一そんな話にも何も。冗談やめてください。
私、身分などはどうでもいいと思っています。武家といっても親の代からの浪人です。何がともかく女の私はどこに嫁ごうと、ただ夫に可愛がってもらえばそれが何よりの幸せだと思っているのです。
お嬢さん、本気でそんなこと言ってなさるんですか？
本気です。いつさん、私をもらってください。承知なんですね。やよよ、そのつもりになっていいんですね。
はい。ありがとうございます。
Unfortunately, Zatoichi's master and Yayoi's brother, being one and the same, does not take it well. He is pissed. As a matter of fact, he treats Zatoichi like a piece of human garbage and essentially banishes him from the house, from the school, and kicks him out and wants nothing to do with him. Of course, Zatoichi, being essentially a peaceful man for the most part, unless he's going to defend himself, he decides to leave. He realizes he has no hope with Yayoi. Now, for me, on my part, I felt like the master sort of over-exaggerated his reaction to Yayoi's feelings for Zatoichi, but I'm guessing it's sort of a thing where the master comes from a samurai family and Zatoichi does not. He's a Yakuza thug, and within that respect, he's sort of considered lesser than. It's a shame, but that's sort of where the story takes us. But in a way, it makes sense and it sort of feeds into the finale in a very poetic way, because turns out, and this isn't a spoiler because we find this out earlier on, the master is a leader of a gang of masked bandits that are terrorizing the countryside. And while Zatoichi is foiling a kidnapping, he discovers that his former master has turned against the side of good, the side he believed his master stood for, and is now one of the bad guys that Zatoichi must vanquish. ironically enough, the new Tale of Zatoichi Part 3 is going to get 3 samurai swords from me. It's not a terrible film. It's not as good as Part 1 and Part 2. It is the first color film, which is interesting, and it looks beautiful. Let me just say that. The clips I'm showing you don't do it justice. I'm watching it off of the Criterion Blu-ray, and it looks beautiful, phenomenal, really rich colors, crushed blacks, sumptuous reds and blues, and I mean it's phenomenal. It looks amazing. It looks like a painting. But the plot for me was lacking. There's a lot of episodic stuff that I left out of this review because I feel like it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, he meets an old friend and they go hang out at at an inn, and that's when he first meets the bandits. The whole subplot with the brother seeking vengeance, they eventually reconcile. There's a lot of stuff in it that doesn't necessarily fit comfortably into a linear plot. So I sort of take that stuff out of the equation. But thinking of it as a whole, I feel like it's sort of a very sloppy script, maybe even a rushed script where they didn't really know what the plot was, and they were sort of making it up as they go along. I hate to think that that's what happened, but that's just how it felt. That is to say, if you saw this movie out of sequence, just randomly, it wouldn't make much of an impact on you. It wouldn't be your favorite samurai movie of all time. It would just sort of be okay. It's an okay movie. It looks great. There's some really great emotional scenes that wouldn't resonate if you haven't seen Part 1 and Part 2. But the fights are lacking. There's not a lot of action in this film. Not like the second one. There's maybe 2 or 3 good fight scenes, and I honestly, the best fight scenes at the end of the film, which I gave you a taste of. That being said, it's not a bad film, but coming off of Part 1 and Part 2, it actually is a pretty rich experience because we get to know more about Zatoichi as a person and as a human being instead of just this mysterious master swordsman, which is a nice touch. And we get to see a human side. That favorite scene of mine that we just watched with Yayoi and Zatoichi is a wonderful sequence because we see Shintaro Katsu, who plays Zatoichi, really dig deep and show us a side of Zatoichi that we haven't seen. Granted, it's only been 3 movies, but we now can move forward with an appreciation of Zatoichi that we didn't have before, and that appreciation is he's a human man, he's made mistakes, and he's always striving to be better. And he is essentially a good man, and if you cross his sword, it's because you were not a good man. My friend, thank you for watching. That's it for Master Chaos Theater for today. We've been watching A New Tale of Zatoichi, the 3rd installment. Like I mentioned before, we have 22 other movies to get through, so I hope you'll join me for that. I hope this video finds you happy, healthy, and well. And until the next movie, which, depending on when you watch this, maybe tomorrow, maybe right now. Until then, I wish you a very, very pleasant good night, wherever you are.